Hold it right there, the manager snapped, stepping in front of her. This line is for executives only. I am an executive, she answered firmly, holding out her boarding pass. The man's eyes narrowed. He didn't even glance at the pass. Don't waste my time. You people don't run companies. Now step aside before I call security. Travelers nearby shifted uncomfortably, whispering, some looking away as if pretending not to notice. She tightened her grip on the handle of her briefcase. Years of work, endless sacrifices, and yet, this was how he saw her. Not as a leader, not as a professional, but as someone who didn't belong. What the manager didn't know was that the woman he tried to shame wasn't standing alone. Someone powerful was about to arrive. Someone who would silence him instantly. But not yet. Not before his prejudice was laid bare for the entire terminal to see. What would you do if someone dismissed your success just because of your skin color? Comment below and subscribe for more stories where justice finds its voice. Kendra Davis walked through the tall glass doors of her office building for the last time that week, her heels striking the marble floor with a rhythm that carried both pride and exhaustion. It had been a week of 12-hour days, back-to-back meetings, and endless emails. But this trip, this one, was different. She wasn't just another manager flying out to a client presentation. She was the lead executive trusted to close a deal worth millions, a deal that could put her name on the map of the corporate world permanently. And yet, despite the corner office and the title stamped neatly on her business card, she knew something all too well. People didn't see her first as an executive. They saw her first as a Black woman. At networking events, she had lost count of the times someone handed her their empty glass, assuming she was catering staff. At conferences, men twice her age with half her qualifications cut across her mid-sentence like she wasn't even there. And the promotion she had earned 3 years earlier, it had come only after her white colleague with fewer results had been offered the position first, until she proved him incapable of handling it. Kendra had learned to live with the constant second-guessing, the looks of surprise when she introduced herself as executive director, the murmurs of, "Oh, really?" But she had also learned to let her work speak louder than any stereotype. This trip was supposed to be proof of that. Her suitcase sat ready by the door of her apartment. She had packed with care, tailored suits, crisp blouses, shoes polished to shine under fluorescent lights of corporate boardrooms. She paused as she zipped it up, glancing at a framed picture on her dresser. It was her mother, tall, commanding, with an intensity in her eyes that said, "No one tells me where I do or don't belong." Growing up, Kendra hadn't always understood the fire in her mother. When teachers underestimated her, her mother showed up at school, her voice firm enough to shake the air. When neighbors whispered that she was too ambitious, her mother clapped back. "Ambition isn't a crime. Sit down and watch her rise." Her mother had built her life from nothing, brick by brick, and even though Kendra admired her strength, she never imagined just how much power her mother truly held. That revelation would come later, too late for the airport manager who thought humiliation was his sport. The morning of her flight, Kendra woke before the sun. The city outside her window was still asleep, streetlights glowing faintly against the quiet dawn. She brewed a cup of black coffee, the bitter taste grounding her in routine. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mom. "Safe travels. Remember, walk like you own every room you enter." Kendra smiled. If only it were that simple, she thought. Owning the room meant people first had to let you in. By the time she reached the airport, it was alive with chaos. Rolling suitcases clattered across the floor, loudspeakers echoed boarding calls, children tugged at their parents' arms. Travelers of every kind swarmed the terminals, business people glued to laptops, families juggling strollers, tourists snapping pictures of even the departure gates. Kendra walked with steady purpose, her tailored, navy suit catching the fluorescent light. She blended into the flow of professionals, but there was always that lingering awareness. Eyes that scanned her as if she didn't fit the mold of an executive. At the security checkpoint, the officer barely looked at her documents before waving her through, yet his tone carried a trace of suspicion that wasn't there for the man in front of her. She caught it instantly. The pause, The narrowed glance. The unspoken question. Are you sure you belong here? She didn't flinch. She'd been asked that question her entire life, sometimes with words, more often with silence. Her gate was crowded. The airline had set up 2 lines, one for general boarding, another marked with bold letters, Executives Priority Business Class. Kendra pulled her boarding pass from her bag. First class, executive traveler, right where she belonged. She joined the line, her back straight, her expression calm, but she felt the stares. A man behind her shifted impatiently, craning his neck to see her pass. A woman whispered to her partner, then looked away quickly when Kendra met her eyes. She ignored it. This wasn't new. This was survival. What she didn't know was that the real test hadn't even started. While waiting, Kendra's mind drifted back to her first job interview out of college. She had walked into the boardroom, resumed sharp, GPA flawless, internships stacked with achievements. But the interviewer's first words had burned into her memory. So, are you here for the administrative position? Her chest had tightened then, but her voice hadn't wavered. No, I'm here for the analyst role, the one that requires a master's in finance. The man had looked startled, flipping through her resume like he hadn't believed the name on the paper matched the woman in front of him. She got the job anyway, but she never forgot the sting of being underestimated before she even spoke a word. Nor, years later, she was still fighting the same battle, only the stakes had grown higher and the arenas larger. She checked her watch. Boarding would start soon. She glanced again at her boarding pass. Executive priority. This was more than just a seat on a plane. This was symbolic. The seat she had earned, the space she had carved for herself in a world designed to shut her out. Her phone buzzed again. A second text from her mom. Proud of you. Don't let anyone shake you. Kendra tucked the phone back into her bag, unaware of just how much she would need those words in the next half hour. Because at that very gate, just a few steps away, a manager was about to decide that no matter what her boarding pass said, no matter what her title said, she didn't belong. And he was going to make sure the whole terminal saw it. The automatic doors slid open, and a wave of heat from the shuttle drop-off was replaced by the artificial chill of the terminal. Kendra Davis stepped inside, suitcase rolling smoothly behind her, the sound swallowed by the endless hum of the airport. Screens flashed departure times, intercoms crackled with last calls for flights. The air smelled of coffee, jet fuel, and impatience. She glanced up at the departure board, confirming her gate. First class, executive traveler, gate A17. She walked with the same calm, determined stride she used to enter corporate boardrooms. Eyes forward, shoulders back. No hesitation. But the airport was not a boardroom. It was raw, public space, one where strangers felt free to judge without consequence. A businessman in a gray suit cut in front of her near the escalator, barely glancing her way. His briefcase brushed her shoulder, but he didn't bother to apologize. Kendra adjusted her grip on her own case and kept moving. She wouldn't waste energy on small slights. She was here to travel, not to explain her right to exist. As she approached security, the line split into 2, standard and priority. Kendra pulled her boarding pass out, the large first-class print clear as day. She stepped into the priority line. Boarding pass and ID, the officer at the checkpoint said, voice mechanical. Kendra handed them over. He scanned the pass, then looked at her, then at the pass again. A pause. His eyes lingered longer than they should have, as if searching for a mistake. Your priority? He asked flatly. Yes, she said steady. Another pause. Then he nodded, sliding the documents back without a word. Behind her, a man muttered, Figures. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through the buzz of the line. Kendra didn't turn. She had learned long ago that not every blade deserved acknowledgement. Past security, she found herself among the polished storefronts and overpriced cafes that lined the concourse. The terminal buzzed with activity, families juggling snacks and strollers, young couples snapping selfies before boarding, clusters of business travelers glued to their laptops. Kendra stopped at a coffee counter, ordered a black Americano, and waited as the barista scribbled her name incorrectly on the cup. She didn't bother correcting it. Some battles weren't worth the energy. Instead, she found a quiet corner to sip her coffee and review her presentation notes. Numbers, graphs, projections, her language of proof. No prejudice could argue with data, but still, she knew walking into that meeting room later, she'd have to prove twice as much for half the recognition. Her phone buzzed again. A message from her colleague. "Good luck today. Knock it out." She smiled faintly. She would. When she finally arrived at gate A17, the crowd was already forming. Passengers clustered in groups, families corralling children, solo travelers scrolling on phones, couples whispering to each other. A long rope divided the space into two lanes. One sign read, "General Boarding." The other, "Executives Priority Business." Kendra walked toward the second line, her boarding pass in hand. She didn't hesitate. Still, she could feel it, eyes trailing her. A man in khakis glanced at her badge, then at her face, lips tightening as though something didn't add up. A woman in a floral dress gave her a once-over, then quickly looked away when Kendra's eyes met hers. Whispers followed, not loud, not direct. Just enough to remind her she was being measured against an invisible standard she hadn't created. She joined the line. Behind her, a young man in a polo shirt sighed loudly, shifting his bag from one shoulder to the other. "Excuse me," he said, voice laced with irritation. "This line's for executives." Kendra held up her pass without turning. "I know. That's why I'm here." The man muttered something under his breath. She didn't ask him to repeat it. Minutes passed. The tension wasn't loud, but it was thick, like smoke you couldn't see but could feel choking the air. Kendra scrolled through her phone, pretending not to notice the sideways glances. Then she saw him, the manager. Tall, stiff posture, a badge clipped neatly to his pressed shirt, and an expression that carried entitlement like a second skin. He walked briskly toward the gate podium, his eyes sweeping the crowd like a shepherd inspecting a flock. When his gaze landed on Kendra, it stopped. She knew the look. She had seen it at offices, at conferences, in interviews. The calculating glance that said, "You don't fit my picture of who should be here." The manager's jaw tightened, his steps angled toward her. And though Kendra stood exactly where her ticket placed her, she felt the weight of the moment gathering, the inevitability of confrontation pressing closer. The line shifted as boarding preparations began. The general boarding passengers stirred, lifting their bags. The executive's line stayed firm. The manager moved behind the podium, then stepped directly in front of Kendra. His voice was sharp, carrying enough volume to be heard by those nearby. "Hold it right there. This line is for executives only." Kendra lifted her boarding pass, calm but firm. "I am an executive." He didn't even glance at the pass. His lips curled into something between a sneer and a smirk. "Don't waste my time. You people don't run companies." The words landed heavy, unmasked. Not a misunderstanding, not a mistake. Racism, clear and deliberate, echoing through the gate area. And just like that, the background noise of the airport seemed to fade. Travelers shifted. Some looked away quickly. Others watched closely, but said nothing. Phones were raised subtly, cameras flicking on. The stage was set. Kendra tightened her grip on her suitcase handle, her voice steady even as the insult burned. "Look at my pass. I belong here." But the manager's eyes told her everything. He had already decided she didn't. The manager stood firm, blocking the line like a gatekeeper. His badge read, "R. Holbrook, Terminal Operations Manager." His arms were crossed, chest puffed, chin tilted with authority he was eager to display. "This line," he repeated, his voice louder this time, ensuring more people heard him, "is reserved for executives only." Kendra held her boarding pass higher. "And as I said, I am an executive. This is my boarding pass, first class, executive priority." Holbrook's lip twitched, as if the words themselves offended him. He didn't take the pass, didn't even glance at it. Instead, he looked her up and down slowly, his eyes dripping with contempt. Do you think I don't know the difference? His voice cut sharp. Executives don't look like you. Executives don't sound like you. Stop holding up the line. A murmur rose among the travelers. A few people shifted awkwardly. One woman clutched her handbag tighter, as if Kendra standing in line was somehow a threat. Kendra's jaw stayed steady. You have no right to judge me by how I look. I have a ticket, and I'm standing exactly where I belong. Holbrook smirked, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Where you belong. Don't make me laugh. People like you buy economy and sneak into lines like this, hoping no one notices. A sting ran through her, but she didn't move. From behind, the man in the polo shirt, who had complained earlier, snorted. Told you she was in the wrong line. The manager straightened. That's enough. Step out of this line right now before I have security remove you. Phones lifted higher. Someone whispered, Is this really happening? Another muttered, She should just go to the other line. The air was thick with tension, the silence of witnesses who would rather watch humiliation than interrupt it. Kendra met Holbrook's eyes. You're out of line, not me. I've worked hard to earn this. I won't move just because you've decided I don't belong here. Holbrook leaned closer, his voice laced with venom. Hard work? Spare me. Don't play the victim. This line is for real executives, not charity cases. The words landed like a slap. A woman nearby gasped softly but said nothing more. Kendra's heart pounded, but her voice didn't shake. You're humiliating me in front of strangers because of my skin color. Nothing else. Everyone here can see it. The manager stepped back and gestured sharply to a nearby security guard. Officer, remove her. She's obstructing boarding. The guard hesitated, eyes flicking between Kendra's boarding pass and the manager's glare. Sir, she has a... Do your job, Holbrook snapped. I said remove her. The guard shifted uneasily. Ma'am, could you please step aside? I'm not moving, Kendra cut in, her voice strong, carrying across the gate. I have a valid ticket. I'm standing in the correct line, and I will not be silenced because this man doesn't think someone like me can be an executive. The guard froze, caught between orders and reason. Holbrook's face reddened, his voice rising with frustration. This is exactly what I mean. Loud, disruptive, entitled. Exactly why you don't belong here. Several travelers looked down, ashamed but unwilling to step in. Others raised their phones higher, recording every second. Kendra took a deep breath, refusing to let his words bend her. You can try to strip me of my dignity, but you will not erase the truth. I earned my place. I belong here. And no amount of shouting will change that. Holbrook's voice turned icy. You belong at the back. Always have. Always will. The words cut deep, dripping with centuries of hate disguised as airport policy. The guard stepped forward reluctantly, but still hesitated. Sir, maybe we should... Holbrook barked, Enough! Call for backup if you have to, but she's not boarding this plane. The atmosphere crackled with unease. Travelers whispered among themselves, torn between curiosity and discomfort. A few shook their heads, others smirked, entertained by the spectacle. And in that moment, the weight of every boardroom slight, every ignored qualification, every time she had been asked if she was lost in the executive wing, it all converged on this very gate. Kendra refused to move. Her voice was steady steel. I am not going anywhere. Holbrook leaned forward, his words dripping with disdain. You'll regret this. But what he didn't know was that his regret was already walking toward the gate. The security guard shifted uneasily, caught between the authority of the manager and the defiance of Kendra's stance. His hand hovered near his radio, as though summoning backup would save him from having to choose a side. Holbrook's voice carried across the terminal, sharp and commanding. Remove her. Now. This woman is disrupting boarding and wasting everyone's time. The guard swallowed hard. Sir, she has a valid boarding pass. Holbrook slammed a hand on the podium. Don't argue with me. Do your job. Heads turned from the waiting area. A group of teenagers pointed their phones, recording every second. A businessman muttered, "Unbelievable," not about Holbrook, but about Kendra standing her ground. A woman hissed, "Why can't she just move? She's making a scene." The whispers crawled around her like snakes. Kendra's voice cut through them, strong, refusing to bend. "The only scene being made here is by you, Mr. Holbrook. You're abusing your authority because you don't think a black woman can stand in this line." A few gasps. Some eyes flicked down, but still, no one stepped forward. Holbrook sneered, leaning closer. "You want to play the victim? Go ahead, but you're not boarding this plane while I'm in charge." The guard finally spoke, voice low but firm. "Ma'am, please, maybe if you step aside for a moment we can—" Kendra locked eyes with him. "If I step aside, I'm agreeing that he's right, that people like me don't belong here. And I won't do that. Not today, not ever." Holbrook snapped, his patience unraveling. "That's it. Call in additional security. She's trespassing." "Trespassing?" Kendra shot back, her voice sharp. "With a first-class boarding pass in my hand?" She held it up high for everyone to see, her name and seat printed boldly. "This is what trespassing looks like to you?" The silence that followed was deafening. Dozens of passengers could see the proof, and still, no one spoke up. Holbrook smirked, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You can wave that pass all you want, but at the end of the day, it's just paper, and paper doesn't change who you are." Her blood boiled, but her hands didn't shake. She leaned in just enough for him to hear. "And no badge on your shirt changes who you are either." The insult landed. Holbrook's face reddened, his jaw clenched. He turned to the guard. "Put her in the holding room until she learns how to behave." A collective stir ran through the crowd. Some pulled out their phones faster. Others whispered, "Is he serious?" The guard hesitated again. His voice was uncertain. "Sir, she hasn't done anything." Holbrook exploded. "She's done enough. Loud, disruptive, argumentative. Exactly what I expected. And you're just standing there?" The guard finally raised his radio, his hand trembling slightly. "Requesting assistance at gate A17." Kendra could feel eyes burning into her back. Some passengers looked uncomfortable, but others nodded at Holbrook's every word. A man muttered, "Always looking for trouble." Another whispered, "This is why things take so long." Their words weren't shouted, but they carried the same sting, quiet daggers thrown from the safety of silence. Kendra stood her ground, her voice clear enough for everyone to hear. "You're proving something I've known my whole life. I can work twice as hard, earn every right, hold every qualification, and still, men like you will try to drag me down because of my skin." Her words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, even Holbrook didn't respond. Then he scoffed, "Save your speeches. You'll be waiting at the back of this terminal while real executives take their seats." The guard's radio crackled back. "Back up on the way." Holbrook folded his arms, smug, as if victory was already his. Kendra clenched her boarding pass tighter. She wasn't going to let him erase her. Not here. Not in front of all these witnesses who'd rather watch than act. Her pulse quickened. The humiliation was sharp, cutting, but beneath it, something else rose stronger. Defiance. She straightened her back, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "You've already lost. You just don't know it yet." And right then, footsteps echoed behind her. Strong, steady, purposeful. Holbrook frowned, distracted, turning his head. Kendra didn't have to look. She knew that walk. She knew that voice when it came. And with it, the tide was about to shift. The steady sound of heels striking tile cut through the noise of the terminal. Not hurried, not timid, measured, deliberate, each step demanding attention without a word spoken. Holbrook glanced over, irritated at the interruption. A woman in a charcoal gray suit approached, posture unshakable, eyes locked straight ahead. Her presence alone carried authority, though no one yet knew who she was. Kendra finally turned. Relief washed through her chest. but she kept her expression firm. This was not the moment to crumble. "Is there a problem here?" the woman asked, her voice even, calm, but layered with weight. Holbrook straightened, puffing his chest. "This is none of your concern, ma'am. We're handling a disruptive passenger." The woman's eyes flicked to Kendra, then back to him. "Disruptive?" Her tone wasn't questioning. It was dissecting the word, pulling it apart. Holbrook smirked, mistaking her measured approach for agreement. "Yes, she's blocking the executive line, refusing to step aside. Claims she's an executive. I've seen this before. People trying to sneak into spaces where they don't belong." The woman's jaw tightened slightly. She stepped closer, her gaze never wavering. "And what exactly makes you so certain she doesn't belong?" Holbrook let out a short laugh, as if the answer was obvious. He gestured broadly, lowering his voice but making sure it carried. "Look at her. Do I really need to explain?" The crowd shifted uneasily. Some avoided the mother's eyes, others leaned in, waiting for her reaction. She folded her arms slowly, deliberately. "Yes, you do need to explain." Holbrook blinked. "Excuse me, you're accusing her of trespassing, of being disruptive, of lying about her status. Those are serious claims. So I'm asking, on what basis? What proof do you have, beyond your assumptions?" Holbrook's confident smirk faltered, just for a second. But he recovered quickly. "I don't need proof. I have experience. I know who belongs here and who doesn't." The woman's lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile, though her eyes stayed sharp. "Interesting, because I see a young woman holding a valid boarding pass, standing exactly where her ticket allows her to be, and I see you abusing your position to humiliate her publicly." Holbrook stiffened. "Watch your tone. I'm the manager here." "And I'm her mother," the woman said flatly. That landed heavier than any accusation. A ripple moved through the bystanders, whispers breaking out, some eyebrows rising, some phones zooming in closer. Kendra's grip on her briefcase eased just slightly. Her mother's words weren't loud, but they struck like thunder. Holbrook scoffed, trying to brush it off. "Mother or not, she's out of line. And if you don't want to get involved in the same trouble, I suggest you move along." The woman took one more step closer, so near now that Holbrook had to tilt his chin upward to meet her eyes. "You've already made this my concern." For the first time since the confrontation began, Holbrook hesitated. The certainty in his voice wavered. Backup security finally arrived. 2 more guards approaching, radios still buzzing. They slowed when they saw the woman standing there, her stance firm, her presence commanding. Holbrook quickly pointed toward Kendra. "That's her. Detain her until further notice." But the guards didn't move right away. They looked between Kendra, the mother, and Holbrook, sensing there was far more to this situation than they had walked into. The mother's gaze shifted to them briefly. "I strongly advise you to think carefully before laying a hand on my daughter." The guards froze. Even without raising her voice, the authority in her tone was undeniable. Kendra finally spoke, her words sharp, directed at Holbrook. "You wanted to humiliate me. You wanted everyone here to think I didn't belong. But now you've dragged my family into this, and that's something you're going to regret." Holbrook sneered, though his confidence was cracking under the weight of the woman's presence. "Empty threats won't save you. The rules are the rules." The mother's eyes narrowed. "No, prejudice isn't a rule. It's a weakness, and you just exposed yours." The crowd murmured louder now. Some were shifting in their seats, some recording every moment, and a few finally nodding in agreement with the mother. But still, no one yet knew who she was. Not Holbrook, not the crowd, and the silence before that truth dropped was stretching thinner by the second. Holbrook's face was flushed, a mixture of anger and unease. He wasn't used to being challenged. Not like this, not in front of an audience. He jabbed a finger toward Kendra. "I don't care who you are or who your mother is. This isn't about family. This is about order, about standards. And right now, you're violating both." The mother's eyes narrowed. "Standards?" Her voice was calm, steady. but sharpened like steel. Or stereotypes, Holbrook bristled. Don't twist this into something it's not. I know exactly what I'm seeing. The woman took a slow step closer, her heels clicking on the polished floor, each sound slicing through the tension. Yes, that's the problem. You're not seeing her credentials. You're not seeing her years of work. You're not seeing the evidence in her hand. She gestured to Kendra's boarding pass. You're seeing only her skin, and you think that's enough to judge. A murmur rolled through the crowd. This time it wasn't whispers of judgment. It was agreement. A few people nodded. Someone muttered, "She's right." Holbrook stiffened, noticing the shift. He raised his voice, trying to regain control. Everyone here knows how this works. We can't just let anyone claim to be an executive. There are processes. There are protections. The mother tilted her head slightly, unimpressed. Protections or excuses? Because right now, all I see is a man hiding his prejudice behind a uniform. The two security guards exchanged uneasy glances. One whispered to the other, "This is getting out of hand." Holbrook caught it. "Then handle it. Do your job." But neither guard moved. The weight of the mother's presence, the firmness of her words, kept them frozen. Kendra stepped forward, her voice cutting clean through the noise. "You're trying to erase me, Mr. Holbrook, but you can't erase the truth. I earned this place, and whether you like it or not, I belong here." Applause. Quiet at first, a few claps from the back. Then another, louder. The sound grew awkward but undeniable as more passengers joined in. Holbrook spun, glaring at the crowd. "This isn't a show. Stop recording and sit down." But phones stayed up, cameras flashing red dots of light. The humiliation he had tried to inflict was reversing. The audience wasn't with him anymore. His voice cracked with fury. "Enough, both of you. Leave this gate now, or I'll personally see that you never fly with this airline again." The mother's face hardened, the faintest flicker of a smile tugging at her lips. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "You have no idea who you're threatening." The words fell heavy, like a gavel striking wood. The guards froze again, eyes wide, caught between two forces. The man they worked under, and the woman whose presence carried more authority than his title ever could. The crowd leaned forward. The silence afterward wasn't empty. It was electric. Everyone knew something big was about to snap. Holbrook tried to laugh it off, but it came out strained. "Big words, empty words. You don't scare me." The mother finally tilted her chin upward, her voice steady, calm, unshaken. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to hold you accountable." The room bristled. The line had been crossed, and everyone knew it. The manager wasn't just facing a passenger anymore. He was standing against something much larger, though he didn't yet understand just how large. Kendra stood taller beside her mother, and for the first time Holbrook's certainty seemed to crack. Holbrook's cheeks burned, his voice growing louder, desperate to claw back control. "You think standing here tossing around big speeches makes you somebody? You're nothing but another loud passenger causing delays." The mother didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed locked on him, unblinking. "You've mistaken patience for weakness. That's always been the mistake of men like you." Holbrook scoffed. "Men like me? Careful what you're implying." She stepped closer, her voice low enough for only him to hear, but the crowd leaned in, hanging on every word. "No, you should be careful." Holbrook blinked. A bead of sweat slipped down his temple. The mother turned slightly, just enough for her voice to carry. "You've threatened my daughter. You've humiliated her publicly. You've called for her removal without cause, and you've done it in front of witnesses. Every phone recording here is evidence." Holbrook's eyes darted toward the glowing cameras, his bravado faltering, but he snapped back quickly, forcing a laugh. "Evidence? Of what? A manager doing his job. Don't flatter yourself. You're not important enough to make this into anything more." The woman's lips curved into a cold smile. "Not important enough?" She reached into her handbag and pulled out a slim leather portfolio, With steady hands, she flipped it open, revealing an ID badge embossed with a logo that gleamed under the fluorescent lights, the airline's logo. Gasps shot through the crowd. The security guards stiffened immediately. One even stepped back. Holbrook squinted, trying to process. "What is this supposed to?" Her voice cut through him, sharp and final. "My name is Elaine Davis. I am the chief executive officer of this airline." The words cracked like thunder across the terminal. Phones rose higher. Passengers froze mid-step. Even the murmurs fell into stunned silence. Holbrook's jaw slackened. His face drained of color. "CEO?" His voice broke. That's not possible." Elaine's eyes were ice. "Oh, it's very possible. And right now, it's your reality." Kendra straightened beside her mother. The humiliation she had carried moments ago now transforming into vindication. Elaine continued, her voice calm but carrying the force of authority that could not be questioned. "You looked at my daughter and saw someone unworthy, someone who couldn't possibly belong here. You never checked her past. You never considered her credentials. You went straight to prejudice. And now every person here knows it." Holbrook staggered, sweat glistening on his forehead. I didn't know. I had no idea she was your—" Elaine cut him off. "That's exactly the point. You didn't need to know. She earned her place without me. She belongs here because of her work, her achievements, her grit. And yet all you saw was skin." The silence was suffocating. The crowd's shame was almost tangible. Passengers shifting uncomfortably, realizing they too had been silent accomplices. Holbrook's voice trembled. "Please, this is a misunderstanding." Elaine's expression hardened. "No, this is systemic, and today you've exposed it for all to see." The two security guards lowered their radios. Neither moved. Neither dared. Kendra stepped forward now, her voice steady, directed at Holbrook. "You wanted me to step aside, to shrink, to disappear. Instead, you've been exposed for what you are." Holbrook's lips moved, but no words came out. His authority had evaporated, stripped bare in front of the very people he had tried to impress. Elaine closed the portfolio with a sharp snap. "Consider this your last day in that uniform." The words landed like a hammer. The crowd erupted. Some gasped, some clapped, others shook their heads in disbelief. Every camera in the room was trained on Holbrook's broken expression, capturing the very moment power shifted hands. And for the first time since it began, Kendra allowed herself to breathe. For a long moment, the terminal seemed frozen. The clatter of luggage wheels, the announcements over the intercom, even the shuffling of feet, all of it faded into silence. The only sound was the rapid clicking of phone cameras capturing every second. Holbrook's face had gone pale. His hands twitched at his sides, as if he didn't know whether to salute or beg. He stammered, I didn't realize. If I had known—" Elaine cut him off with one sharp look. "You didn't need to know who she was. Respect should never depend on titles. But that's not what you showed today. What you showed was arrogance, bias, and blatant discrimination." The guards glanced nervously at each other, stepping slightly aside as though to make room for Elaine and Kendra. Kendra stood taller now, her voice steady, strong, echoing through the stunned terminal. "All I wanted was to board a plane like every other executive here, and you tried to strip me of that dignity in front of everyone. But you didn't break me. You exposed yourself." Applause rippled through the terminal, not hesitant this time, but loud, sharp, undeniable. Some passengers rose to their feet, clapping, nodding. Others looked away, ashamed of their silence earlier. Holbrook raised a hand, as though he could calm the storm, but his words stumbled. This doesn't have to go public." Elaine's tone was ice. "It already has. Dozens of phones are recording right now. This moment isn't leaving this gate. It's leaving this airport, this city, this country. You've written your own ending." Holbrook's knees seemed to buckle under the weight of her words. A passenger, a middle-aged black man in a tailored suit, stepped forward. His voice was loud, firm. "Miss Davis, your daughter deserves more than an apology. She deserves recognition. And I want to say, as someone who's faced the same looks, the same whispers, the same doubt, today she stood taller than any of us. Kendra's throat tightened, but she didn't cry. She nodded once in gratitude, her eyes glistening, her voice calm. Thank you, but this isn't just about me. It's about every person who's ever been told they don't belong. Today, he tried to silence me. Tomorrow, it'll be someone else. That has to change. Elaine placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, steady and proud. And it will change, because the difference is now people are watching. And we will not be silent. The crowd erupted again. Cheers this time, not just claps. The tension that had hung heavy over the terminal finally broke. Holbrook tried one last time, his voice cracking. Please, Miss Davis, I've worked here for 20 years. Elaine turned her gaze on him one final time. And in 20 seconds, you destroyed every lesson those years should have taught you. You're finished here. Security will escort you out. One of the guards, almost relieved to be given direction, stepped forward. Sir, please come with us. Holbrook's mouth opened, then closed. His shoulders sagged. With a final defeated glance at the crowd, half of whom were still recording, he turned and stumbled away, escorted by security. Kendra exhaled, the weight finally lifting from her chest. Elaine squeezed her shoulder gently. You didn't let him win. You stood your ground. I couldn't be prouder. For the first time, Kendra let a small smile slip through. I guess strength runs in the family. Elaine smiled back, her eyes softening. No, strength runs in you. The gate agent, who had been frozen behind the counter during the entire ordeal, finally found her voice. Miss Davis, Miss Kendra, your seats are ready. Please, board whenever you like. As they walked down the jet bridge, passengers parted to let them through. Some clapped them on the back, some whispered apologies. Others simply nodded in respect. And though Kendra's journey had begun with humiliation, it ended with something else, vindication. Because no matter how many tried to diminish her, the truth was undeniable. She belonged. The jet bridge was quiet compared to the storm they had just walked through. The low hum of engines filled the air, steady and grounding. For Kendra, each step felt lighter now, as though she had been carrying not only her own weight, but the weight of every Black professional who had ever been told they didn't belong. She and Elaine entered the first-class cabin. The passengers who had witnessed the earlier scene shifted in their seats. Some glanced away, ashamed of their silence. Others, braver, met Kendra's gaze with a flicker of admiration. One older woman even whispered, almost reverently, "Good for you." The flight attendant approached quickly, her professionalism intact but her nerves visible. Miss Davis, Miss Kendra, we're honored to have you on board. Please let us know if there's anything you need. Kendra simply nodded, her grip still tight around her briefcase. She slid into her seat, eyes drifting to the window, the runway lights blinking against the fading dusk. Elaine settled beside her, perfectly composed. She studied her daughter for a moment before speaking. You did well, Kendra. Kendra shook her head. I didn't feel strong. Every time he said those words, I felt like I was shrinking, like the ground was giving way. Elaine leaned closer, her voice steady. Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's standing firm even while you're shaking. And that's exactly what you did. Kendra turned, her eyes searching her mother's face. I couldn't let him win. I couldn't step aside, because if I had, it wouldn't have just been about me. It would have been about every person who looks like me, who works twice as hard just to be seen. Elaine nodded slowly. And that's why you belong here, because you won't let them erase you. And every time you fight back, Kendra, you open the door a little wider for the ones who will come after. The words sank deep, heavier than the airplane itself. Kendra swallowed hard, feeling them root in her chest. After a pause, she asked quietly, Does it ever get easier? Elaine tilted her head, considering. Not always. The world can be stubborn. Prejudice wears many disguises. But people change, sometimes faster than we think. and every confrontation chips away at the old walls. Kendra let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Then I guess this one chipped pretty loudly. Half the terminal saw it. Her mother's lips curved into the faintest smile. Then let them see. Let them see what resilience looks like when it refuses to bend. A passenger across the aisle leaned over slightly. "Excuse me," he said softly. "I just wanted to say what you did back there. It mattered. People noticed. I noticed." He gave her a small nod, then leaned back into his seat. Kendra blinked, surprised, but managed a quiet, "Thank you." She turned back to her mother. "All my life, I've heard you say we have to be twice as good, twice as prepared, just to stand in the same place. Today it felt like even that wasn't enough." Elaine's expression softened. "It won't always feel fair, and sometimes it won't be. But that's why we keep pushing, not just for equality, but for respect, because dignity is not theirs to give, it's ours to claim." Kendra let those words settle in, the weight shifting from burden to fuel. Outside, the engines roared to life, vibrating through the cabin. The plane began to roll, gathering speed. The lights of the runway stretched out ahead, a path carved through the darkness. Elaine reached over, taking her daughter's hand. "Remember this moment, the sting, the fight, and the victory. It's not just another story, it's part of who you are. And one day when someone else is facing their own storm, they'll look to you. You'll be the strength they borrow." Kendra squeezed her mother's hand, her voice steady now. "Then I'll be ready. For me. For us. For everyone who deserves better." The plane lifted, wheels leaving the earth behind. The city lights sprawled below like a constellation of stories. Some broken, some shining, all connected. And though prejudice had tried to pin Kendra down that day, she rose higher, carried not only by the aircraft, but by generations who had fought before her, and by her own unshakable will. She belonged. She always had. And now the world would know it too. What would you have done if you were in Kendra's place, facing humiliation just for the color of your skin? Tell us in the comments below. If this story moved you, hit the like button so more people see it, and subscribe for more true-to-life stories where courage meets injustice and dignity wins. Because silence protects prejudice. But sharing stories like this, that's how change begins.